You can feel it deep in your gut, even before a single official word is said out loud in the office. The atmosphere shifts, the energy in the room completely drains, and people simply stop engaging with one another in a meaningful way. You walk into a meeting and the air feels thick, almost heavy enough to touch, as colleagues look everywhere except at each other. Something in the room just feels undeniably off, like a low-frequency hum that you can't ignore. No one names the problem, no one points a finger, and no one dares to break the tension, but everyone in the building senses the invisible weight of unspoken resentment pressing down on the collective spirit of the team. That heavy, suffocating silence is exactly where most organizational problems, cultural failures, and team breakups actually begin. It is the deceptive quiet before the storm, the precise moment when trust begins to erode in the shadows, long before the first argument even happens. Conflict doesn't explode overnight like a sudden, unpredictable lightning strike. It is a slow, methodical build, a gradual accumulation of small frustrations. It grows quietly in the dark corners of daily operations, fueled by the tiny things we consciously choose to overlook because we are too busy. It starts with a missed comment in a high-pressure meeting that felt slightly dismissive. It feeds on a misunderstood email that wasn't clarified or a bit of feedback that was delivered poorly. It lives in the tension left unresolved for days, weeks, or even months of silent, growing resentment between talented people. And then, suddenly, it is no longer a small, manageable issue that can be easily brushed aside over coffee. It's a full-blown organizational crisis, a wall of hostility that threatens your team's very foundation, their mental health, and their collective ability to produce even the most basic results. Most leaders don't fail because they lack empathy or because they don't care about their staff's well-being. They fail because they wait much too long to take that first uncomfortable step toward a real resolution. They see the smoke, they smell the burning, but they turn their heads and hope the fire will put itself out. There is a common, dangerous human tendency to hope that things will eventually smooth out on their own. We tell ourselves that people will just grow up, get over it, or find a way to coexist. But hope is not a management strategy, and avoidance only serves to feed the very problem you are trying to escape. No, conflict doesn't resolve itself through hope or tactical avoidance. In a professional environment, unmanaged tension doesn't just disappear, it stagnates and rots. It grows like a toxic weed in a garden, eventually strangling innovation, creativity, and every positive interaction in its path until nothing is left. The difference between a good leader and a truly great one is remarkably profound and visible in these moments. Good leaders are reactive. They only respond to friction when the damage is already done, the bridge is burned, and the fire is completely out of control. They are constantly in firefighting mode. Great leaders, however, are consistently and relentlessly proactive. They recognize the very first wisps of smoke early in the process, long before the fire starts to escalate into something that could destroy the department's reputation or its morale. They don't wait for a formal complaint to act. They are dedicated students of human behavior and organizational psychology. They notice the slight, sharp change in a person's tone during a stand-up meeting. They spot the sudden, uncharacteristic absence of a teammate's usual enthusiasm and realize that something has shifted deep beneath the surface. We must completely and fundamentally redefine how we see conflict in the workplace. It is not a definitive sign of a bad or broken team. In fact, it often means your people actually care deeply about the work, the mission, and the final outcome. Passive teams don't have conflicts. They just don't care. Conflict means there are different perspectives, diverse life experiences, and unique ways of solving complex problems. If everyone agreed on everything instantly, you wouldn't have a team, you would have a group of echoes. The real problem is never the existence of conflict. The problem is the lack of a system to handle it. The problem is always, without exception, how that conflict is managed, navigated, and handled by those who hold power in the organization. Poor handling turns a simple misunderstanding into long-term, structural damage. It creates a culture where people stop sharing their best, most daring ideas because they fear the fallout. When the handling is poor, professional feedback becomes vague, overly polite, and ultimately useless for growth. Meetings feel peaceful on the surface, but it's the hollow, cold piece of a graveyard. No innovation is happening because no one feels safe enough to challenge the status quo or speak their truth. That's your primary signal to step in and lead. Silence in a professional team is rarely a sign of true, authentic harmony. It's usually a sign of psychological withdrawal. When people stop fighting for their ideas, it's because they've stopped believing that the environment is safe enough for their ideas to survive. Great leaders pay close attention to what is not being said during a formal conversation. They notice the subtle eye rolls, the folded arms, and the sudden defensive shifts in body language. They understand that the real meeting often happens in the hallways after the official meeting has ended. The first major shift in your approach must be understanding that most conflict is not actually personal. It may feel personal, it may hurt your feelings, but it's usually rooted in a systemic misalignment of expectations. It's about the what, not the who. It's about roles that overlap and goals that clash. When leaders treat conflict as a personal character flaw, the situation becomes emotional, defensive, and messy. But when they treat it as a structural issue, it suddenly becomes a puzzle. A puzzle is solvable through logic, data, and communication. It removes the need for villains and heroes. Once a situation becomes purely emotional, logic completely disappears from the conversation. The reptilian brain takes over, and people move into fight-or-flight mode. And without logic, reaching a sustainable resolution becomes nearly impossible for even the most seasoned and experienced managers. So, instead of asking, who is right and who is wrong, great leaders ask, what is actually happening in our process that causes this friction? They look at the workflow, the communication channels, and the incentives. They focus on the situation at hand, protecting the dignity of the individuals involved. This creates vital space for everyone to breathe, space for clarity, space for mutual understanding, and most importantly, space for genuine progress. This approach allows people to save face while admitting that a process is broken. It shifts the energy from me versus you to us versus the problem. Another critical factor is psychological safety. If your people don't feel safe to disagree, the real root of the problem stays hidden forever while the symptoms continue to fester. A team without safety is a team that hides its mistakes until they are too big to fix. Leaders set the tone for the entire culture through their daily, observable behavior. If you react defensively to a challenge or a critique, your people will quickly learn to hide the truth. They will tell you exactly what you want to hear, and you will lead your team straight into a blind spot. Clarity is a powerful, transformative tool that few leaders master. It removes toxic assumptions, reduces raw emotion, and brings the entire conversation back to the cold, hard facts. It's about stripping away the he said, she said, and looking at the objective reality of the situation. To fix the issue, you must identify the expectation gap with precision. What was expected by the team members? What actually occurred in reality? And where is the disconnect? Once you truly understand the nature of the gap, you can finally begin to build a professional bridge to fix it. Imagine a scenario where two of your best engineers stop talking. One thinks the other is being lazy, the other thinks the first is being a micromanager. A weak leader ignores it. A strong leader brings them together to look at the project map and redefine the boundaries of their roles. In that moment, the leader doesn't judge. They listen to the frustrations, they validate the feelings, but they always bring the focus back to the mission. They help the individuals see that they are both on the same side of the table, facing the same external challenge. In the end, Padre, your leadership is not tested when the seas are calm and the KPIs are green. It's revealed in how you handle the moments that are difficult, messy, and emotionally charged. The way you manage conflict today will define your leadership legacy for years to come. Don't avoid the hard conversations. Have the courage to lead them.